Hello, welcome to Autistic Chess Openings. We're covering the Scotch Gambit as white, line number 5. All right, let's review today's line. Scotch Gambit, this time it's d6. Last time it was h6. A lot of these moves are going to be similar in this line, and it can transpose if they do h6 several moves along the way. So they go d6, we take in the middle, they take, we take. Those are all the same moves as the h6 variation, and then they usually play d6 at that point. So they could play h6 here and do a transpose. They bring their knight out, we bring our knight out, just like in the h6 line, and if they play h6 here, it again transposes, and then we play e5, stuffing our pawn down their throat, threatening bishop takes f7 check. But they usually don't do that here. It's only 1% of the time they try h6 now. The main reason for them playing h6 earlier was because our knight was on f3, and they've had traumatic experiences with knight g5 right here, and they get nervous about that. And so they're playing h6 in the other line to avoid that. They're not doing it here. They go d6, we take, they take, we take. They bring their knight out, we bring our knight out. They don't need to play h6 to prevent our knight from jumping to g5 because it's not there anymore. So they don't usually do it. So they usually do bishop e7 instead, 54% of the time. So they go bishop e7, and then we go bishop f4, preparing to support our pawn pushing and to prepare to castle queenside. It's important to do that in this particular line. They castle kingside, we castle queenside. 27% of the time they're doing bishops e6. Almost the same amount of time they're doing c5 or a6. Those will come up as well. Today we're covering bishop e6. They go bishop e6, and we do this move that takes the amount of games from 31,000, have continued to this point, down to 1,000. 1,100. We're doing king b1. That happens as white 2% of the time. People don't play that. It is a strong engine move. It doesn't look like it. It's a finesse, a subtlety that makes your position a lot better. It is the best move in the position. So you go king b1. So when their bishop comes out challenging your bishop, ignore it and go king b1. And then they help us by taking the bishop, and then when we take back, and now our rook is staring directly at their queen, and we're now threatening e5. And they go a6. Typical reactionary moves is, oh look, I see a queen, let's strike at it. So they prepare to do that with a6, preparing b5. We ignore it because they're not ready yet, and we push e5. They can't take because their queen is pinned, or the pawn's pinned to their queen. They got to move their knight somewhere. They usually move it to attack the bishop to try and gain time. We move bishop to e3, and now they've left their knight with no retreat, and we can win it by going g4. But they may or may not notice that. If they're going down this line, it's highly likely they're not noticing it because their rating is probably somewhere in the 1600s, and that is a move that not everyone sees, or they might not have even done that knight move in the first place. Well, maybe they didn't have much of a choice. Yeah, they could have gone to d7. So they swing wide, we go bishop b3, they go b5. Now we bring our queen to c6. And this is the end of our line today. But I'll show you a little bit of how to play it from here at the end of the, like this is the end of the line. The game, there's only one game that got this far, and it went rook b8. And then white responded suboptimally, and what we would do at this point is we'd go b4 and win that knight. All right, so let's get into the line, and at the end of it I'll show you how to handle that position at the end, because it's not as deep as I would like because of that king b1 move, and I'll show you like how to respond to a number of moves they could do at that point. And once we have more data, if more people play down that line and get to the end, we'll have more data to know what's likely at that point, and we'll be able to prepare just for those instead of just everything. But anyway, all right, so let's get into the line. Scotch Gambit, d6. All right, so let's get our cheat sheet up that shows the strengths of each of these moves. And let's go on a quick tangent about the strength of the moves. All right, so here's what Stockfish looks like under the hood. So here's stockfish.exe. Here's a command prompt. I'm going to open it up and go, let's see, Stockfish. It's running Stockfish 18. Let's go into UCI mode, Universal Chess Interface. Now we're looking at all the options, and it's saying UCI OK. It's ready for input. So I set some options here. You don't have to remember any of this. I'm just showing you what my program here is doing to come up with these scores on the side, so that you know what this data is and at what level you can trust it. All right, so here we are with UCI OK. I'm running 10 old computers. 6th gen Skylake Intel processors, HP Elite Desk 800 G2 minis. I got 7 of those and 3 that are bigger, the small form factor ones instead of the minis. They're really wimpy. My equipment sucks. It's the best I can afford. And so I got them cheap. And the minis are running a TDP, a thermal design power, the amount of juice it runs in the CPU is only 35 watts. Most desktops are at least 65. So they're little wimpy computers. 3 of them are bigger and do the full 65 watts. They're quad core, so they're running 4. I can run 4 Stockfish programs at a time on each computer, because Stockfish doesn't use the graphics card. Stockfish uses only the CPU, and so you want to maximize. If you want to maximize efficiency because your resources are limited, you want one Stockfish program, one thread running per core, per physical core of your machine, no hyper-threading. So with 10 computers, that's 40 programs running at once, running around the clock. I do about 7,000 positions a day, and I've been doing that since January. And that's why sometimes when I'm showing you my moves, sometimes they're not populated. That's because my older database was running Stockfish 17. They're populated in there, and that's where I made my decision, because it was pretty clear which one was best. And I didn't need to readdress some of those, even though we upgraded Stockfish 18. Sometimes it's pretty cut and dry which moves to do. Anyway, but I said it was really important in an earlier video, and I didn't want to get into the details as to why node depth matters and not position depth or time depth. And that's what we're doing here. We're just going to dig a little bit into the details here. We set UCI OK, and then we go set option, name threads, threads, name threads, value 1. So we want each one using one thread on our CPU, one core per Stockfish program. And then we're also going to set option name hash, hash table. Let's see, set option name hash value 1024. We're giving it some space to work in, and we want it to be the same so that when we run these, they are repeatable. We can get the same value every time we run. So given a specific position we feed to Stockfish, we run the evaluation to a certain number of node depth, we do it again, and we get the same result. If we start a new instance of Stockfish each time, and we go to the exact same, we have the same hash table size, we use the same amount of thread, we use single threaded, not multi-threaded, otherwise you get what's called race conditions, and then it's not deterministic anymore. It's not going to be the same result every time. So we're going to set those options to be like that so that we can reproduce these and so that we can compare apples to apples. And then we need a position. So let's just, I think I've got one position, fen. If you know about fen positions, fen is just a way of representing a chess position, and that's what a fen looks like. So there's one example of a fen. So that's a position, I just fed it, and now I can say go depth and then a number like go depth 20 or 50, and that'll go 50 half moves, 50 plies deep in that position, and we can't go to the same depth with different positions and expect it to do equal amount of research on each position. We need it to be the same amount of work per position, so we need to do it not with depth, but nodes. So go nodes 200, 123,000, 123 million. All right, so there's 200 million, and this is what Stockfish looks like under the hood when you're using it on a website. So you got to learn to read this, and so right here you have nodes, so it's now at 4 million nodes it's already searched, and the score it says based on whose turn it is, the person whose turn it is 290 points behind, which is almost a whole bishop or a knight. And so if it's white's turn, I need to tweak those, I want my negative to mean it's always black, and my positive to mean it's always white, and not have the negative or the positive be based on whose turn it is. So I need to reverse it if it's black's turn, and not reverse it if it's white's turn. But this is where I'm getting my values from. So we've now looked at 15 million nodes out of 200 million. So you can see it takes maybe 10 minutes to do one of these numbers right here on the side. And it looks like it's stuck, but it's not. It's taking a long time for this current step. And we're at a depth of 27 plies deep, 28. So we're 14, half that to get actual moves. So we're 14 moves deep that it's searching to evaluate this position. And I'll just kill that. There's a sneak peek at how I'm getting these values on the side. and storing them here. I've got my client program that lets me explore and define work. So like, let's say I want to map that out more, or let's go to something I'm not doing down there, and then I click expand. It adds all those positions to the database that need values. I can also remove it, shrink it. And so that's I have a manager program that's running. It's running down here, and it is talking to this database here that I'm querying here to ask it how much, how many positions are still in the queue you're working on. 1,900, okay. And then I got the worker program, and this one gets distributed to all my computers. So I'm giving you a little bit of trade secrets here that people might be able to, make this program and compete with me, but maybe I'd like to make it someday and monetize it. But for now, I'm just using it to map what I love, chess. So people have access to Stockfish, and they use Stockfish for one position. I'm standardizing a system here, and I'm using it to map lines, not to figure out the evaluation of one position, and to chase those lines and cross-reference it with what's common against what's strong, find lines that are very effective and win a lot of games. And I suspect higher level rated players do things like this. This is how grandmasters are pulling out engine lines. They got to be doing something like this. Maybe they're hiring people to automate it instead of like turning it into a program like I'm doing. But I'm just one guy. I don't have someone I can hire to like map out chess for me. So I had to automate this thing, and here it is. So these are all at a depth of 200 million nodes, and what I have found is that it needs a depth 5 times greater, 1 billion nodes, to really get accurate. When things are very, very, very tactical, and the queens are on the center of the board, both of them, and there's tons of moves they can do, and Stockfish is trying to decide in a very hairy position what's the score, who's winning and by how much. So that is something that'll come into play in some of the future lines. We're going to learn soon. One of the lines gets extremely tactical, and it's beautiful. You're going to love seeing it. And there's queen sacrifices all over, and rook sacrifice, and it's a mess, and it's beautiful, but it gets inaccurate. There's a certain move, and I just fed it that position where it says, oh, white's 300 points ahead with optimal play. And then one half move later, black plays, and it's like, never mind, it's 450. There's a 150 point swing because I'm only going to 200 million. And then I tried that same depth manually at 1 billion, and it was like, oh, it's 450 now. So we can see it at better depth. I can set better depth, but then I can't map as many positions, and then I can't map out these lines quickly, and so I'm constrained by my resources. So anyway, there's my short tangent. Anyway, back to the lesson. So, all right, so d6. That gives us a 40-point lead here if they do d6. And we're happy to see it. You don't see d6 at high levels of play. If we look at top, you do, but not often. But you will at 2,500 and above, it still happens. Let's see, wait, go back. There, d6. Happens 4% of the time. So after knight f6 and bishop c5, you will still occasionally see d6 at high levels of play, and who knows, a grandmaster might throw it at someone hoping they don't know it very well to get a good position. So you do need to learn how to handle it even at high levels of play, but it happens quite a bit at low levels of play, but it does give you a 40-point lead. So let's follow side by side with my engine on the right, d6, my mapper, and then d6 over here. All right, so now we do knight takes d4. That is one of two top moves, castling, or knight takes d4, and knight takes d4 is superior and a lot more error prone for our opponent. Why? Because as soon as we take knight d4 in the middle, they usually take back 39% of the time. Actually, that's at high levels of play. Let's drop this back down to all levels of play, because grandmasters, or I know 2,500 isn't grandmaster, higher level rated players usually don't do this line. So let's change it to all ratings, and now a lot more of them are lower rated. In fact, the average rating is 1625, knight takes d4, and half the time, 54% of the time, players rated 1600 on Elite Chess are taking that knight in the middle and giving you another, doubling your score. So they take in the middle, you take back, now your score is double what it was before. All right, so now, after we take back, knight f6 is 47% of the time. There's also bishop e6 and queen f6, but knight f6, just learning that one gives us almost half of the coverage that we need in this position. So they go knight f6 the majority of the time, and that is a slight inaccuracy. They're losing another 10 points, give or take. And then we go knight c3, and this is looking very similar to line number 4, where they did h6, and then did the same moves. They trade in the middle, they bring out their knight, and they could transpose if they do h6 here or the move before, but it's really rare at this point because usually people play h6 to avoid the knight at f3 going to g5, and the knight's no longer there, so they're not worried about it, so they don't play h6. So at this point, the transpositions of them playing h6, this move, or here at this point is about 1%. So it's rare, but it's happened to me. So when they do, shove that pawn down e5, and when they take, go bishop takes f7 check. All right, and we transpose. Now they do bishop e7 instead of that h6. By foregoing h6, they bought themselves time to do bishop e7, and now e5 doesn't work. We do e5, they take, we can't take their queen at that point because it's protected by their rook and their bishop, and we just throw away our strong center here and all our active pieces by just trading them all off. That's not wise at this point. So they go bishop e7, we go bishop f4. We build up pressure here. Let's look at the engine strengths of these moves. Knight c3, and now they go bishop e7. That's neck and neck with their top best moves. Bishop e6 is also pretty good at this point. So they go bishop e7 and common, good and common. So they go, let's see, bishop e7, we go bishop f4. And look at how much better it is than the other moves. Now bishop g5, I've added it, but it hasn't been mapped yet because that was my old database. You'll just have to trust me, bro. That was a joke. Bishop f4, and then they castle. All right. So we go bishop f4. Now 78% of the time they castle. Everything else is below 10%. So this is the dominant move here. At first, you don't need to prepare for anything else. As soon as they get out their bishop, just for memory's sake, they bring out their bishop, we bring out ours, they castle, we castle. Okay, that should be easier to remember that way. And they castle kingside, we castle queenside. One of the reasons we went bishop f4 and develop that bishop out and not castle kingside is so that we could castle queenside and line our rook up, aiming at their queen, and get more efficient use of our moves. So they castle, we castle. It's also nice that when I scouted ahead, look at how people play this. They castle, that's one of their top moves. Then we castle, that is definitely our top move. And now their most common move is, okay, bishop e6. Yeah, bishop e6. So that's one of their top engine moves, but trading it off is not. So they go bishop e6, and then, let's see, that's 27% of the time. They also might do c5 and a6. We'll have to cover those at different times. a6 and bishop e6 are pretty good. But they go bishop e6, and check out our move, king b1. Look at what the engine thinks of king b1. And this one I actually did map out on this database. So here's king b1. Look at this spread of moves here and their scores, and I'll show you it back in a minute. But I expanded this one too, and I expanded this one too. Because these are all really close, relatively, I mapped them all. I expanded them all. And here's king b1. You got 3 moves that are barely under 100 points, and everything else is 100 or more. And the most common ones are 114, 121, and 170. Very error prone because they brought that bishop out, and we stepped aside with king b1, and then they take, which is beautiful because then we take back with our queen, and we line up our rook against their queen, and it helps us. And you can see them lose more positional points here in their position by taking. So bishop e6 wasn't bad, but following it up with bishop takes bishop is. And most people do. That's why they do the bishop e6. 35% of the time they trade bishops here. If you go look at these others, f3. Now we have, remember, king b1 left us with 3 moves that are like 89, 95, and 99, and then everything else was higher, with the most common moves being significantly higher. If we go f3 instead here, a6 is common and gives them a score of, our lead is only 83. They have other options that they might see but don't usually see but could, that give them a score of 72, 86, 94, 96, then 100. And then they got a couple blunders down here. And so f6 is not, I'm sorry, f3. f3 is not as optimal as king b1. Kind of shocking. We're not used to seeing us lower rated players. I'm a lower rated player. I'm just, I made a neat piece of software. I'm a strong club player. I'm not a grandmaster. I'm not a master. You shouldn't listen to me because of my ability to play chess. You should listen to me because of my ability to map openings. And that is all I'm good at right here, is mapping openings here. All right, so king b1's looking better than f3. You go rook at h to e1. Look at all these, 60, 68, 64, 70. It gives them tons of opportunities to do better than king b1, where they've only got 89, 95, 99 or better. So we're already seeing f3 doesn't beat king to b1, rook at h to e1 doesn't, bishop to e2 doesn't. Look at all these responses and their scores. So we can already see king to b1 looks like you're playing passively. It looks like a finessing move. It's strong though. And it's probably because of positions down the road. When this blows up, you're getting your king off that diagonal ahead of time. And it has the added benefit of they're likely to trade off that bishop and give you another 30 points in position. So let's continue. So bishop takes A, B, C, 4, C4, and I take back with my queen. We take back with the queen. So king B1. They take, we take. All right, at this point, they see that our queen is there. It's making them uncomfortable. It's on the light squares. They don't have a light squared bishop. Their knight can't really drive it. People see a queen and they just, oh, I can attack it. Let's attack it. They don't look at whether it goes to better squares, and especially in faster games, but even in slower games, they just think that attacking things is good. Ooh, I can check you. That's a good move then. No, it's not always. So A6 is the top move here. How does that score at the engine? Oh, look, our score just doubled. They play A6 22% of the time, and it doubles our score. It's not a good move. They need to deal with this problem in the middle. They've got a pinned D pawn against their king, and I can play E5. They need to handle that, and they don't. And then what do? E5, which is twice as good as any other move. So they go A6, and we hit them with E5. So A6, E5. We're right here now. All right, 3 common moves. Knight H5, Knight G4, Knight D7. They're all, and B5 as well. But those first 3 are almost the same in how frequent they are. Knight H5 is slightly more frequent, 27% instead of 22 or 22. So we're going to look at Knight H5, which, look at the difference. Knight H5, score 352. Knight D7, score 254. There's a 100-point difference between them going back to D5 to D7 or going to H5. Knight to H5 is another blunder, a positional blunder, which we have to capitalize on. But notice that when they bring their knight out to H5, their knight's on the edge of the board, so there's only 2 retreat squares. Normally, knights have 4 squares they can jump backward to and 4 that they can jump forward to. But because it's on the edge of the board, they only have 2. And look at those 2. One's blocked and the other's covered by our pawn. Every time you jump your knight forward, you should be glancing at your exit plan. If you can't cement it where it's at and it can be attacked by a pawn, you should be looking at its exit plan. It doesn't have an exit plan here. So putting their knight there, it's gaining time on our bishop, sure, but as soon as we move it, now the knight has to move again or lose it. So we go bishop e3. Let's see here. They go knight h5. 352 points ahead we are now. And the engine changes its mind. It's actually 393. Again, I'd like better computers. 200 million is not enough. We just saw a, let's see, 352, 393. A 41-point swing from one move to the next. That's not accurate enough. I want it to be small point swings, 5 to 10 points per move. Even in tactical positions, I'll need better computers for that. Anyway, but it's good enough. I can just explore. I just have to make sure to compensate that I check every single line that could be remotely close. So we know that this line here that's 352 is really 393. Once Stockfish gets closer, we go bishop e3, and now look at it, 390, 393, 390. Good, it's stabilizing. But once we back off bishop b3, their top engine move is g6 to create an escape for their knight. How many people are looking at that? They got their attention on a6 and let's strike at the queen. And we can move our knight in a minute if they even notice it. And yeah, b5. We're down to 3 games, so this is not super indicative of what's likely. But they played a6 when it was a bad move. Why else would they do that if not to do b5? So that's happened 2 out of 3 games. They went b5. We go queen c6. So that knight's still hanging out under a death threat of g4. So here they swung wide, we moved our bishop, they threatened our queen, we stepped forward. Hopefully they've forgotten about that knight. We're in our final position here, and the only game that went this far was between a couple players rated almost 1900, and black went rook b8, and then white went knight e4, and what he needs to do here is g4 and win that knight. So let's take a look at this ending point. I don't think rook b8 is going to be a common move here. There's too many unresolved problems that are probably going to be more common. So let's have this be our stopping point here, move 14, and let's look at it over here in the engine. So they go b5. They drop another 20 points by playing b5 instead of g6, so they go b5. Now we go queen c6, and our score goes from 410 to 412. That's more like it, more stable. And now we have our ending point, and I've mapped a good number of these past this point, but I don't know which one to prepare for because I don't know what's common, because I only have one game of data. So I kind of need to prepare you all for a little bit of all of them. So let's take a minute to assess this position that's only at move 14 and is unstable because the material is equal right now, and yet we're 400 points ahead. We're supposed to win at least a piece out of this, and the way to do that will depend on black's moves, and we don't know what's likely, and so trying to prepare for all of them is going to take too long. So let's just prepare for, let's just get some general ideas here. G4 wins the knight. Knight D5 is also a strong move. How do I know that? Well, I am not a grandmaster. I'm not a master. Stockfish is, though. He's better than the world champion. So here's G6. All right. We're going to hit that with bishop H6. Okay. If they go queen E8 challenging. All right. Let's start at the bottom. Queen C8. Knight D5. Top move. All right. Let's look at F6. They go F6. Okay. G4 wins the knight and is one of the top moves. You could play that. You could also do some tactics first. There's another hidden tactic here. Let me back up a minute and show it. So things to pay attention of in this final position. G4, pay attention to that. And knight D5, pay attention to that. And now pay attention that if he moves his F pawn, you've got a check here at D5. And if you can clear both pawns out of the way, you could do a check on D5 and pop off that knight on H5. So against F6, we can take here in the middle, threatening their bishop. And now if they take back with the bishop, with anything, the pawn or the bishop, we can go queen D5 check and pop off the knight on the side. If they do F5, it's a little more tricky, but they move that F pawn again. We're going to win that knight on H5 if they move that F pawn. So they go F5 this time. What do? G4, which traps that knight unless he takes our pawn for free, right? And that ruins it, right? No, that clears up that shot on the side. We now take in the middle. They have to take back with the bishop or the pawn, or move the bishop, and we got that queen D5 check, popping off that knight again. So just a little more subtle there. We have to hit H4 or G4 first, threatening to win it in order to win it. So that's a neat little tactic. So be aware of that knight is undefended over there, and you might have a check if he moves his F pawn. All right. Rook B8 is what was played in the game. You just hit him with G4 and you win the knight. Let's see here, G5. Okay, now the knight has a retreat square, so you got to play this differently. Knight D5 is strong. You're putting pressure on the bishop. You're also putting pressure on C7, and your queen can take that. And if your queen challenges it, there's actually a kind of funny move here. So like queen E8, you can actually do knight D5 here and ignore the attack on your queen. He takes your queen, you take his bishop check and get the queen. So but you know, he might see that, he'll probably see that and not take it. But I'm just pointing that little fork trick out because in some of these lines it might be important. You have this queen F3 retreat. If he challenges your queen with queen E8, you do have this queen F3 retreat. So make a note that there's a nice safe square that you can move your queen to if you need to and attack his knight in this position. What else we got here? That was G5. There's also G6, his top move. You go attacking that rook with your knight. And his top move is to let you take that bishop. You can attack your, sorry, did I say knight? You attack the rook with your bishop. And he can block it, but that's not his optimal move. Moving his rook over to C8 and letting you take that rook if you want is. That's counterintuitive. So there's an attack there that I have not mapped out if he retreats his knight to G7. Like I said, this is a hairy ending point, and you haven't gained you haven't inflicted your mortal wound on your opponent by getting a piece. So I'm trying to show you all the tactics that can come up here. Queen E8, Queen F3. Yeah, we covered that. B4, G5, G6. I think that's all of them. Okay, well, there's the end of the line, and there's some tactics at the end for you. Play this line. If you get to the end, we'll get more games in the pool here, and then I can predict what's likely for them to do here, and we can prepare for that. And we can get this all the way into an end game where we get our advantage cashed in. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you join next time, I'll be happy to have you, and thank you.